as long as we're here and we just have a little bit more time, I have this question. All we've really been talking about with Dash is to enable transactions, borderless transactions, reducing friction in an ecosystem or an economy. And I just had this idea, all of this sex appeal is around right now NFTs. And it's certainly possible, according to the technical experts, to do NFTs with Dash data contracts. Mm-hmm. I could think of a couple ways to do that, or reasons to do that on Scoby being B2B. One are things like training manuals and essentially company secrets that only certain people get to have. So if you actually want a borderless but still secret community, that it's something that you could actually tie and track any transfer of particular documents. Then there are ways to use that. So, for example, if I wrote a book and rather than making it a bestseller, I wanted to charge $1,000 for it and only wanted a few people to get that, but also there to be an aftermarket. And there are plenty of people who would probably, hold on. I order all of these books. This is part of all my research, from business gurus. So this guy, Myron Golden, he charges $25,000 an hour for his time. He's one of these business gurus. So I ordered this book, and he has all these things that he calls secrets in it, but anybody can buy this for $29.99. So I just thought it'd be really cool if Myron Golden sold a book. If he's getting $25,000 an hour, why not sell a book for $25,000 and only sell it to 10 people? It was just, so those were some ideas I had, and there are obviously, plenty of others, but I was just wondering, I'd like to ask you first, Darren, if there's anyone out there talking about or looking at Dash data contracts for NFTs.
Yeah, there is somebody that was talking about that. He wrote up a blog article. I imagine I actually don't know. He goes by the pseudonym ReadMe. And so they actually had more or less a prototype deployed on testnet. And what they did was they used NFTs or tokens in general to represent items in Minecraft. And so that way you could have only 12 shovels or something like that. You could, in the whole game that they were playing. So that's all I've heard that about Dash and NFTs, as far as a real implementable use. So
cool.
But that's promising from what we talked about yesterday, about my own personal project. I have ulterior motives because I as I'm retiring, I'm dabbling in a few different startups, and so David has introduced me to the world of not just buying cryptocurrency, but actually using it to develop. And so we actually developed an application at the Department of Defense using Ledger technology, and it was a prototype. Got it to work, and unfortunately, some of the other senior executives who are not technically inclined couldn't understand it. But we wanted to know how we could make it so we can decrypt it, so we can read stuff, so we make sure people are not doing what they're not supposed to be doing. And it's that completely, that's not the reason you implement this. So we got it on the shelf, but it was actually a really neat idea of transmitting and receiving documents. So again, this is very promising for both Scope and the other projects.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of our big challenges with the Dash community, who knows how the votes are gonna fall. But I do think there, being in the B2B space is going to, it is where the money and where the action is. I mean, it's ultimately where most of the economy but the Dash community right now is more about how you spend it on food or home improvement supplies from Lowe's or this or that, or like you said, Minecraft and that type of NFTs. And I hope that there are also some voices who understand that if we can crack that code of actually allowing people to collaborate on major projects, then adoption could skyrocket in a way that it could just really open the floodgates for the powers that be to really understand this technology, and how it's not just hype, and what self-sovereignty really means, and what it means to have a choice of engaging with an organization, whether that organization is called the United States of America, or that organization is called Amazon, or that organization is called the Rotary Club, or your Minecraft team, or what do they call them? Guild. So whatever it is, an organization is. What's that?
I guess you never played World of Warcraft?
I actually have. My kids are sort of in that. They were back in what was
Guild.
What was that?
You go that thing. I believe they call it Guild.
Yeah, no, but I forget the games. So we skipped generations. Like when my kids got a certain age, I just got into Jack and Daxter and all the platformers and left the strategy games. So I'm kind of in that. And RPGs, I sort of jump over. But yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on more anybody, how this can play with the Dash community, but also with the world at large, and how we might be able to bring those things together.
Well, so one thing to do is not to get too caught up in so the word NFT has become something that doesn't really mean. It means whatever somebody wants it to mean at the time. But the Dash data contract can be used. Basically, it just says you're the owner. An NFT is a little mini contract that says you're the owner of this thing, and that appears to be fully capable in the Dash interface. And so one approach might be to create as soon as we've started this session here. As soon as this session was started, we could create a data contract for this session that contains there's contracts, and then inside of the contracts there's something called documents, and it's the documents that are really the meat of it. And we can create a document in there that says, hey, the ID of this session is X. The owner of this session is, at this point, it's David. So the owner of the contract would be David, and the owner of the session would be David. And then we could do something like, give it a royalty rate. Say, hey, the royalty is 10%. And then the contract is saved. And from that point forward, we could say, all right, well, whoever owns this session's document gets all of the money that's generated by this session minus the royalty rate, which goes to the contract owner, which is the person who created it. And at that point, you could offer those contracts on a market. So Scoby could have a market. That's basically an NFT. So that, we've described an NFT, and then we have to sell it. So we could list these sessions on a market. And that at that point, it basically has become the existing broadcast network model. People who were very good at promotion could buy those contracts, and they could generate sales for that session. and then the owner, so in this case David, would get his royalty, and he would get the lump of money up front, and then the promoter would get money from the session. They would keep the lion's share, and if they wanted, they could sell it again. And then the owner would get royalties there. So that would be an NFT market that makes more sense than the current NFT markets.
Matthew, you are so fucking smart. I just want to say I love working with you. Because think about it, like what I was just saying about this book, this guy, Myron Golden, there's where he is. Like, he has so many fans, right? That if he had a session and people joined and you only got to keep this or watch it later if you join this session. Or if you join the session, you also got resale rights to it. So if other people wanted it,
Yeah.
And then if Elon Musk, wanted to make a bunch of money for some project, he could show up. And no, I love this idea. It's super cool.
So David, on that, one of the things that can go along with it is that you have documents and materials that you would actually store somewhere else and not, put it into the blockchain, because it would make that computation too big. But you would have a separate server where we'd have the stuff stored for the user base, right? For the collaborators. And so write a book, put it in a session. People who came to the session will have access to that book. They can resell it. So it's all part of that paper I wrote at MIT for dealing with music and music rights.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah. So that was, so that's a same construct. And so I'm watching the businesses out there. There's not a lot of people doing, that level with the creators. So I think, one, it's an open market. And so we have an opportunity to be first, which sometimes is awesome and sometimes not so. And I'll leave it up to the business folks here, because I'll do the technical, do the business part. But I really think we could actually, start pulling together collaborators like at YouTube. They make money to pimp out their different things, and there's some folks I watch and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And sometimes I rarely ever buy anything on it. But what if, I pay the subscription, and part of my subscription goes off to the things that I watch. So all the creators are actually benefiting from the platform versus, YouTube benefiting from the platform for you buying their stuff and they're selling the advertising. Here, it's shared throughout the community, and then being the platform has the micro transactions that goes on that adds to the bank account, but then add to that the faucet effect. Pay people to come to watch stuff. Pay people to do different things. So me as a creator, I can come to you and say, hey, I want more visibility. Pay you as advertisement as they get promoted, and then you actually do that to go through those tasks.
Yeah, there was that company that gave away Bitcoin for opening emails. I forget what it was called, but it was ultimately bought by Coinbase or something.
And Coinbase was doing something like that too.
Yeah. I like that stuff. I think the starting point is still B2B, and for a couple reasons. I mean, just think about right now. This shared experience is something that's unique and original, and no one's going to know beforehand if it's going to be valuable or not, if ideas are going to come out of it. But people are joining. There are 10 people on. There were 11 before. So now there are 6 viewers, and there's the 4 of us on stage. And what I like to distinguish between the live pixels, which is what's happening now, and the dead pixels, or people who are going to view this later. And it's going to have a lot less value later. Or it might wind up having a lot of value later, depending on what happens. But I think designing an ecosystem which has the possibility of economics built in, then there'll be all kinds of just cool emergent behavior as people come up with new live experiences and new ways to monetize them. I mean, it could be, let's say people were going up in that Blue Origin rocket and you wanted to be having a conversation with William Shatner, while he's doing it. That's going to be a very different experience than even while he's on the ground and Jeff Bezos has grabbed the champagne and is cutting him off. There's just all kinds of cool things that could come from this if we do create this connection. And kind of the last thing, pointing out to the Dash community, because there was a comment that they don't see the value. And the value that happened for me, it's right now 2:29, so we're like 1 minute from the end of what this was planned. The value that came from this half hour, having Robert and Darren and Matthew all on a screen with me, so far exceeds what any of these bulletin board systems or posting on Facebook or watching live streams or anything else. And just the value of getting people together publicly is just, it's enormous. So Darren, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this test session?
No, I'm glad that I got a chance to try this out, and I'm looking forward to doing this again Wednesday. I don't know if you would have the opportunity or have the setup where you could record the session, David, but if you could record it, I would, at least Wednesday. Good, and then I'll get something out to the community so they know to look at it, and you put up something as well. I guess anybody that wants to come Wednesday should just follow you.
Yeah, that's it right now. And we're setting up, that's actually one of the big features we're working on right now is setting up the series of events and events that are going to be in the future. That'll probably be in, next week. But anyway, we just missed it this week. So
Okay.
yeah, the only way to join is just to follow me and I'll alert you. Or just show up at 8 a.m. Eastern and you'll see the session on the home screen like you did.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining. And thanks for viewing, everybody out there in the audience.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.